Module 4b, Coordination, Reporting, and Partnership in Service Delivery. Minnesota's network of Safe Harbor grantees works throughout the state to help youth and families. Next, you will learn firsthand about the role of the Safe Harbor Regional Navigators and how they may be able to support you and the youth you work with.
Kate LePage, Safe Harbor East Central Regional Navigator, Lutheran Social Services. Annie Lafreniere Ritchie, Safe Harbor West Central Regional Navigator, Someplace Safe.
We have 9 regions throughout the state, so there are 9 regional navigators, and within each region, the role of the navigator may look a little bit different. However, overarching themes really is that the navigator role is to implement and uphold the No Wrong Door model, which is a multidisciplinary approach to identifying and responding to youth and adults that have been trafficked or exploited or are at risk of being trafficked and exploited.
We universally serve as a central point of entry, both into the Safe Harbor system and to services for at-risk, exploited, and trafficked youth. So I like to explain the role essentially as a Google for human trafficking services. And navigators provide training to communities, service providers, and youth on understanding the dynamics of trafficking, when and how to respond, and available services.
So individuals can reach out to us for consults and referrals. Consults may not include any identifying information of the youth, so it can be an anonymous consult. How would I handle this situation moving forward? What are some of the safety concerns I would want to consider? And then we have a 24/7 response. So all navigators, as part of our funding, have to have a 24/7 response to manage crisis situations. So everybody has a hotline, depending on the region you're in. It may look a little bit different of who you're calling and the size of the network that is helping to assist on those hotlines. But we are able to help with crisis response to residential programs, but also for law enforcement and different entities like that in need of immediate placement.
And in some regions and communities, navigators are also doing direct service, advocacy, and case management with youth and are facilitating prevention groups such as Not a Number.
So the way regional navigators may interact with you in a residential program can differ depending on the situation, which is one of the really great things about the Safe Harbor Network is we can respond by case scenario.
Some navigators may be providing case management and advocacy services to youth who are in residential programs. So navigators may be a part of helping a residential program assess whether a youth has been exploited or trafficked, and they may also be help set up law enforcement or child protection investigations and interviews. They may also be facilitating wraparound or response teams, and they may be meeting individually with youth. They may be checking in with youth via phone calls. They may be listed as youth's crisis supports, and they may also be attending meetings regarding youth's progress and helping plan their discharge. So in addition, Safe Harbor supportive services providers may be doing similar work to the regional navigator. A youth may be entering into residential programs from Safe Harbor shelter or Safe Harbor housing programs, and they may be discharged from residential programs into Safe Harbor shelter or into Safe Harbor housing programs.
The ways that we can assist as somebody is exiting is sometimes when individuals are exiting residential programs, they're not quite ready to go home or to be living on their own, depending on age. So sometimes we're setting up a step-down process for them. So there might be times where a youth is leaving a residential program and they're still needing some additional care or specific education and care related to the concerns of exploitation and trafficking. So there are times that we might want to make referrals to Safe Harbor housing programs or housing programs that have partnered with Safe Harbor for a long time that are able to meet some of those needs and provide some of those ongoing pieces of education prior to the individual living on their own or going back into the family system. I also have had individuals that have been released from residential programs that are going into foster care programs. And so it can be nice to loop in your Safe Harbor programs and services so that prior to that youth going into that foster care placement, we're able to meet with that foster family and provide them education and help them learn how to safety plan with youth and to identify potential red flags of unhealthy online use or relationships. If possible, prior to a youth being exited from a residential program, we want them to have an opportunity to build rapport with a case manager or caseworker or advocate from Safe Harbor that will be able to work with them once they're living at their next step, whether that's home, foster care, or another program. So that way that they're able to have a little bit of a warm handoff between staff that they've grown comfortable with at your residential program and then the staff that's going to be able to meet with them and be an ongoing support person once they've left. So there's a number of reasons we want to make sure that we're setting them up for success upon leaving, and if possible, looping people in the earlier the better to be able to create those support networks and systems.
So Safe Harbor providers, and most particularly regional navigators, are a wealth of knowledge around understanding unique needs of exploited and trafficked youth. Education and training include initial assessment and identification of exploited and trafficked youth, understanding trauma-related behaviors, understanding the Safe Harbor system and when and how to connect a youth to Safe Harbor services, understanding the dynamic of trafficking and exploitation, especially by region. So this is important, especially to note for programs in rural communities who may have a limited view of human trafficking. Also, trainings around building internal responses to trafficked and exploited youth, culturally specific services and responses, and so much more.
So if you have an individual within your program that you're concerned about, have identified some red flags, maybe have seen some unhealthy relationship or conversations around a relationship that they have, you're welcome to give us a call and we can talk through what you're seeing. I find that past the initial training, those consultations are the best way to continue to build capacity within those that are working with high-risk youth. So talking through those real-life cases that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis is going to help build your toolbox of how to respond in different situations within a best practice manner. We also are helping build capacity through creating protocol and policies. So within residential programs, we're able to help create protocol and policies around best practices, identifying, responding, and also setting up really safe avenues for initiating these conversations with youth so that we have fewer triggers and really great responses when there are triggers taking place. And then we also can help in us building out tools that you can use as providers in these residential programs. And again, some of those tools have been built, like the MyTie tool is a really wonderful tool. We can help you guys in initiating those types of tools within your program as well, so that as you're having some of these conversations, you have something to fall back on and assist you with it.
So since navigators are often deeply embedded in community level work, we also have connections to partners from multiple systems, which include law enforcement, probation, child protection, mental health case management, advocacy, legal services, housing, and so much more. These connections really help provide more seamless services for youth.
Youth that have experienced exploitation and trafficking oftentimes have a large system of providers around them. Individuals that come into contact with me may have a probation agent, a guardian ad litem, a social worker, their guardian, maybe a foster parent. They have maybe a law enforcement agent that's involved with their case. And then when we get into residential, they now have their lead caseworker, maybe an advocate within your residential program, and a therapist. So with all of these different providers, it's helpful if we can come together and be in communication so that we're using the same language when talking with the youth, that we're all on the same page with case plans, that we're all on the same page with next steps. That way, when the youth is talking to each individual provider, that they're not getting different answers and they're not getting confusing and conflicting responses. So not only is it helpful for the youth for all their providers to be in contact, but it's also helpful for providers themselves. This way, we're not doubling up on services and efforts where it's not needed. Another thing that is helpful bringing in a regional navigator in terms of collaboration is sometimes we all speak very different languages between systems, and it can be nice to have somebody that is impartial, that can sit there and help bridge the gap between different agencies, different programs, different services.
Many safe harbor providers and regional navigators recognize the link between historically underserved and marginalized communities and increased experiences of exploitation and trafficking. Safe Harbor has a number of culturally specific and culturally diverse programs, which can be used not only for direct youth services, but they can also help residential programs provide more culturally sensitive and culturally humble services, and to also better understand how and why certain communities are disproportionately impacted by exploitation and trafficking.
We know that marginalized communities and minority communities are victimized at a much higher rate, and in Minnesota in particular, our Indigenous population and our trans youth are victimized at an extremely high rate comparatively to other types of populations. It is important to note that we want to make sure that youth are connected with an appropriate culturally specific program, or at least offered to be connected with those programs. We always want to make sure that we're keeping youth autonomy at the forefront in all the decisions that we're making. It is part of my job as a regional navigator to know about the local resources, including those that are culturally responsive. And so it might not be the navigator or the safe harbor agency that you're contacting that's going to provide those services. Rather, we might be connecting with the most appropriate option available within that area of the state.
Several safe harbor providers across the state have been trained in facilitating Not a Number, which is a youth trafficking prevention curriculum. I was trained in by Love 146 in this curriculum in 2017 and have been facilitating it in a variety of settings since then.
This is a 5-module curriculum that goes through so many different topics that are imperative to prevention of exploitation and trafficking. It discusses what exploitation and trafficking looks like. Again, we see so much of this sensationalized version of trafficking and exploitation in the media. It's so nice for youth to see some real life examples of what this could look like in their community. It goes through healthy online use, healthy relationships, red flags, safety planning, so many different pieces that are just, again, imperative to prevention. And we've partnered with Love 146 to be able to get this out throughout the state. And so this has gone out and been done in many different programs throughout the state, whether that's residential, DOC programs, school systems, drop-in centers, foster care families.
Every group that I have facilitated has been different due to the dynamics of the youth participants, but the biggest takeaways for me have been ensuring that youth have the opportunity to connect, to process, and to de-stress with program staff following group sessions. Also, taking each youth's developmental levels and experiences into account before starting the group. So, for example, making extra accommodations and creating learning tools for youth who are on the spectrum. And then finally, preparing program staff for youth disclosures.
I've seen that this has been extremely helpful for youth. What I find when I go in and do this program is that the youth that are particularly in DOC and residential group homes, are really unaware of what a healthy relationship looks like. And I find that that's one of their biggest takeaways, is opportunity to dive into those conversations a little bit further, and to not only see how people have been unhealthy towards them in relationships, but also how they've been unhealthy towards others in relationships. And I have seen many referrals come through from that programming. Oftentimes I have at least one or more disclosures within each group within residential programs while doing this curriculum. So not only is it preparing youth that are fairly high risk for experiencing exploitation and trafficking with the tools when they're ready to leave, to help them stay as safe as possible in their relationships and communities, but it's also helping us as providers to educate youth to a place where they have the language to make a disclosure, and they can associate what has maybe happened to them in the past with this issue and get services that way as well.